22nd of November. Good to see you all here. Tanya, good to see you, albeit at afar. Just before we do get underway, this here, people, is a negative COVID test, my fourth one in 5 days. I was with Tanya and I was with another chief executive who both have COVID, and I've got a cold, so I've been really, really nervous. But again, negative. That was about 15 minutes ago. Cool. If we could get underway, please, Roy, with an opening karakia. Thank you.
Father in heaven, give thanks for all the blessings you bestowed upon us today in the past. Kia tukuna tunu mai koe ngō tiaki maramatanga whakaora ki rungi te ki, kia pikira te o te kāta marama ki rungi a, tatura ki ngā tira nei māu ki tiana, rātou katoa, e au pēhiana, tai roa ki te pani te rau kore te pauaru. Kia pikira te ora te kāta marama ki rungi rātou, tatura ki o mātou huanga karanga maha kāri konei te haora, tai no mai rā kia mātou te kaini hera o Ōtorohanga, e pai no tana rā kia koe, kia tukuna tunu mai koe o katoa tiaki maramatanga whakaora ki rungi a mātou maun o koe mātou tiaki manaki ro te toro ngāka tō mātou nei hui. Tai no atu ki te wā ka tukuna ana e mātou o mātou whakamopi te kia koe. Tukuna ana e mātou i ni no i runga tunga tau tamai kuraiti. Ake. Amine.
Kia ora, Councillor Willison. Thank you very much for that. If I could now move on to the words of wisdom, and I'll pass that over to Councillor Williams.
Morena. Words of wisdom this morning come from a man of wisdom who is the chair of the Future for Local Government Review Panel. You may have already all read it, but I think it's a very good message, and I think the document's a very positive one that we can work with. We need strong leadership and partnerships that embrace the principles, rights and obligations embedded within Te Tiriti o Waitangi. We need to rebuild trust and confidence in local democracy where people can meaningfully contribute to decision-making. We need councils championing and activating well-being, drawing on their resources, influence and proximity to communities. We need local and central government thinking and acting differently about opportunities and possibilities. They must be willing to innovate, value and trust others, and to use their collective resources and strengths for the benefit of communities. This is the wero our draft report lays down.
Awesome, thank you for that. It's good to see we've got a full team here today, so there are no apologies. In terms of late items, I believe there's no late items, Kai. Moving on to confirmation order of the meeting, that's set out quite clearly, and I see no reason to change that at this point. Do any councillors have any items on the agenda that they need to or feel they should declare a conflict of interest? Cool. If not, moving on. We have nobody in the public forum today, so we'll move on to confirmation of minutes of the Ōtorohanga District Council, dated 1st November 2022. Do I have a mover and a seconder for those, please? First, Councillor Dow, second, Councillor Prendergast. All in favour? Against? Carried. Any points of clarification on those minutes? Thank you. Moving on to the receipt of minutes of the Ōtorohanga Community Board, dated 2nd November 2022. Do I have a mover and a seconder for those? Move Councillor Hughes, second Councillor Christensen. All in favour? Against? Carried. Move on to the receipt of minutes of the Kawhia Community Board, dated 3rd November 2022. Do I have a mover and a seconder for those, please? Move Councillor Jeffries. I will second that. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. My verbal report. When I was going through this, most of you were a part of just about everything I did over the last month, it seems, so I'm just really repeating what you already know. So on the 2nd of November, we had the Pōwhiri and Community Board meeting. On the 3rd of November, I had breakfast with the Chief Executive of Local Government New Zealand, Susan Freeman Green. Then we went to the tangi of Kumatu and Nick Te Whangai. We had the Kawhia Community Board Pōwhiri meeting following that. On the 4th, over at the Don Rollins Centre in Karaperu, we went to the Local Government Zone 2 meeting. On the 7th, we had the bus tour of the district, and I flew to Wellington that afternoon for breakfast with Minister Sepuloni the following morning, and then came back and returned to the second stage of the bus tour that afternoon on the 8th. 9th, we had a council workshop day. The 10th, I visited Beatty Home with Councillor Johnson. which was really interesting again. Always enjoyed going through there to see what the team's up to. And then I was with Councillor Williams and our Chief Executive at the Royal Provincial Meeting in Wellington on the 16th and 17th. Any matters arising from those minutes or points of clarification anybody has? Cool. I'd like to move that my report be received. Seconded by thanks, Councillor Johnson. Appreciate that. All in favour? Carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 5, council committees, appointments and delegations. I'll hand over to Graham.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Your Worship. So, Tanya, are you happy for me to present this, or did you want to make? Under the Local Government Act, the Mayor has the power to establish committees of council and also appoint chairs and deputy chairs. So, His Worship the Mayor has exercised this power, and the structure that he's come up with is in Appendix 1 of this report. So I'll quickly go over that just so everybody is clear. So on page 6, you'll see Appendix 1 memo from His Worship the Mayor. So the 3 committees that have been established are Risk and Assurance, the Chief Executive Review Committee, and the Grants and Awards Committee. The appointments to those committees: the chairperson for the Risk and Assurance will be an independent chair yet to be appointed. So we will go through a process there to appoint an independent chair, and we're sort of currently working through that at the moment. Deputy chairperson, Councillor Jeffries, and membership on that committee, Mayor Baxter and Councillors Hughes and Prendergast. The Chief Executive Review Committee, the chairperson, Mayor Baxter, deputy chairperson, Deputy Mayor Williams, and membership, Councillors Johnson and Tamaki. Grants and Awards Committee, chairperson, Councillor Christensen, with deputy chair, Councillor Tamaki, with members, Councillor Dow and Willison. So the second part of the resolution is, while the Mayor can establish committees and appoint chairpersons, the delegations to those committees must be made by council. Therefore, the delegations to the committees are included in the recommendation in this report. So you'll see the 3 committees there: Risk and Assurance, and they're broken down into the power to act and the power to recommend. So when they have the power to act, that decision can be made by that committee. Power to recommend it means that they can recommend to council to pass a particular resolution. So I'll take the resolution as read. It's the same as with the previous triennium. So it has many changes. Yeah. So.
Sorry, who moved that, Graham? Okay, we've got those. Is there any questions around those delegations, councillors? Thank you, Councillor Jeffries. Second, Councillor Johnson. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 6, appointments to external organisations, committees and groups. Again, back to you, Graham.
Yeah, so I'm just not sure how we want to run this. So there's obviously a number of organisations and committees and groups that we appoint representatives to. At this stage, we've left that recommendation blank for each of those committees. So I guess we just need to work through those in order, and then we note those and then pass a resolution at the finish.
Okay, so on this, what we're planning on doing with each of these is there'll be the appointed position, and then there'll be an alternate as well. So we've got ourselves covered for those positions. Talking to Kaya earlier with the Ngāwaio Waipako Governance Forum, the request there was from Te Nehi Nui to have the same person that's on both those committees. So there's that continuity and flow. So in terms of, at this point, I'm just really asking for expressions of interest for those committees, if there's anybody that has a real desire to be on there. In terms of commitment, Kaya, to Te Nui or Ngā Waipa, do you have any idea at this point? You can say no if you don't know.
So the Ngā Waipa Pro-Governance Forum are going to undertake a review. They normally meet twice a year. It may be that a few more meetings are required. The Te Nui Joint Committee need to establish a joint management agreement by December next year. So there will be more meetings required. We're just not sure at this stage how many will be.
Okay. Certainly with Ngā Waipa, the commitment there, I've been on that for the whole time I've been mayor, and I mean the meetings have been incredibly infrequent. So if we see a greater frequency there, I wouldn't be surprised, especially with the motivation of Te Nui to get things up and going. Tanya, do you have anything to add to those at all?
Kia ora, thank you. We already have a request from Te Nui Joint Committee. The first meeting is being proposed for about a week's time. So I tautoko support what Kaya has said, that I think there will be a flurry of activity for that particular rōpū group for the first kind of 6 months. And then probably it'll settle into a more even kind of spread of meetings.
Thank you, Tanya. So I suppose around the room, expressions of interest, anybody? In terms of their time commitments? I know just by default, I tend to be looking at the both of yourselves, whether that is right or wrong, councillors.
Morena. Yeah, no, I'm quite happy to be there.
Be the delegate,
Yep.
or the appointed councillor. Anybody else has an interest? Yeah. Thank you.
I'd be quite happy as an alternate.
Yeah. Cool.
And then maybe even just go along with Jamie's when she does go.
Which, happens quite often in a number of these forums anyways, are the alternates there, just in, to get a clear understanding of what's going on. Cool. So at this stage, Kaya, if we've got Councillor Tamaki and Councillor Christensen as the alternate, any questions or other points that councillors need to bring up? Are you happy with those appointments? Moving on then to the Rokawa Charitable Trust and Ōtorohanga District Council Joint Committee. Do we know much about the involvement there? Again, I'm looking at you, nothing. Tanya, know much about this? At this stage,
Right.
there could be very little commitment, to be honest. Whether Councillor Prendergast, I'd put that in your court as it is probably the area you represent for Rokawa, if you're happy with that.
Yes, I'm happy with that.
Thank you. And an alternate, Councillor Johnson, thank you. Waikato Regional Transport Committee, I'm still very happy if Councillor Dow's still happy to have that role.
Yep, I'm happy.
Cool. And an alternate there. Councillor Hughes, the alternate. Thank you. Moving on to North King Country Development Trust. I've talked to Councillor Prendergast about her interest in that position, and I believe she does have an interest in that role. Councillor?
Yes, I'm interested.
Well, thank you. An alternate, Councillor Jeffries? Thank you. Sorry, I just look straight at you, Councillor. my apologies.
I'm very happy to
Thank
do
you.
that. Thank you. Yep.
Waikato Region Civil Defence Emergency Management Group Joint Committee. Councillor Williams, you've been there throughout your tenure. You still wish to continue?
Yep, very happy with that. Thank you.
An alternate for Civil Defence? Thank you.
Be interested in that as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Jeffries, an alternate. And I think that covers us, doesn't it?
Yeah, this part, there's on part. B, just, some of these will just be for the council in the area.
Oh, sorry, I want you to know the page list, my apologies. Establish Waikato Regional Council Passenger Transport Committee. Yep, Councillor Dow, Councillor Hughes again. I don't think there's going to be much there, but there will be, obviously, one of the agenda items is about, obviously, public transport from Ōtorohanga through to Hamilton. They've established Waikato Regional Council West Coast Zone. Councillor Jeffries, I'd imagine, and alternate Councillor Williams. Cool. Happy Valley Nutrition Liaison Committee. Councillor Dow, Councillor Christensen, the alternate. Cool, thank you. Waikato Liaison Group, Councillor Prendergast.
Yes, I'm happy with that, thank you.
Cool. I can be the alternate there. Better put my hand up for something. Waikato Community Impact Forum, we do the same again.
Yes,
Cool, thank you. Ōtorohanga District Development Board, Councillor Christensen, as has been. Councillor Johnson, thank you. Tihara Rural Water Scheme Committee, Councillor Williams, I'll be the alternate. Arahina Rural Water Scheme Committee, Councillor Prendergast, I'll be the alternate. Ranganui Rural Water Supply Scheme, the same, thank you. Waipa Rural Water Supply Scheme, Councillor Johnson, the same. Okay, I think we've got that covered. So can we have a mover and a seconder, please, that everybody's happy with those appointments on those committees? Move Councillor Jeffrey, second Councillor Dow, all in favour? Against? Carried. Awesome. Oh, sorry, Tanya, you do have your hand up. Probably just wave, really.
Through you, Your Worship. One of the things, just for the benefit of everyone, one of the things that we're thinking of changing this time around these some of these appointments, not all of them, is to actually connect the appointed elected member with the relevant staff member. So last triennium, for example, Annette, Councillor Williams, before the Joint Committee for Civil Defence, was having a catch up with Andrew, so that she could be briefed on anything that we knew about as staff that might be relevant, so that they could have a look at the agenda together, etc. So, for example, with Councillor Dow on the Regional Transport Committee, it may be that he's connected with the new roading manager, so that they have a cordial or a discussion before he goes to his meeting and is briefed on some of the things that we might be working on. So I think we've talked about maybe having portfolio councillors in the past, and I think this approach could sort of see the start of that sort of system emerging around some key topic areas. So just wanted to let you know, I guess, about the support that we will provide you to make sure that you are ready for any meetings that you're going to.
Yeah, thanks for that, Tanya. It's actually really important. Certainly with the Nawaya Waipa, I've always gone to Andrew and Trish prior to those meetings, just to find out what I need to know, because there's nothing worse than when you do go into a regional meeting and you're uncertain in terms of what's going on, in terms of what the officials are up to. It's all very well having an opinion as selected member, but you do need to have that basis behind that. So it's really good to have that support from the staff. And I think, as you made mention of Councillor Dow with the Regional Transport Committee, yeah, there's so much going on in those agendas. It's helpful to have somebody on the staff assisting and offering some advice. Cool. Moving now, what time is Mark due?
He's here.
Oh. Okay, we'll move on to funding for collaborative public transport. We have Mark Tamura coming in from Regional Council to talk to us on this. So, Mark, I can see you there. Welcome.
Through you, Your Worship, can I just, before we introduce let our guests speak, can I just give a bit of background on this one, please?
Please do.
Yep. So this this report is on our agenda as a result of discussions that have been had with us and Waitomo District Council and Waikato Regional Council, who have also been in discussions with the tertiary education sector and Waka Kotahi around a public transport service for the King Country and into Kirikiriroa, Hamilton. So we've been approached for a contribution, a local share contribution to this project, and as outlined in the report on the agenda, for a reasonably small sum, we can leverage quite a substantial amount of funding to put a service in our community that's probably been a bit kind of a light touch approach in the past. So why would I be putting a report on our council agenda for what looks like under $10,000 in this financial year? So this is unbudgeted expenditure for us, and while the sum is not large, the kaupapa of this report, the topic of this report is public transport. And territorial authorities, of which we are one, are not generally in the business of funding public transport. So nowhere in our long-term plan or annual plan have we indicated that this would be something we would fund. And so I thought it was prudent to bring this report to council so that you get to make the decision on us being in this in this activity for this trial period. So that's all I want to say. I will now hand over to Mark. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Tanya. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you also for the introduction, Tanya. Kia ora koutou, ko Mark Tamara tōku ingoa. Welcome back to the table, councillors. It's nice to meet you all and have the opportunity to work with you through this triennium as well. To be honest, I don't have an awful lot to add other than what Tanya has already provided, other than perhaps to say that this is a really unique opportunity. It's a first of its kind in respect of the level of collaboration and the number of parties that have been able to be brought together in relatively short order. It is unique for the Ministry of Education themselves to directly fund a public transport service, but it does come on the back of quite some considerable work bringing their interest in providing accessibility for students to tertiary education opportunities, together with Wintech, and also obviously our own public transport service offering, or the opportunity to leverage that to do something better together than what any one of us would be able to do individually. I hope we'll be able to continue to do more of these types of things across the region, but this is the first of its kind.
Cool. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, it is really exciting. In terms of the details and when the bus is passing through Ōtorohanga and where the stops are proposed to be in Hamilton, and also the return times. And then the next question from me is, what is the indicated fare price?
Sure. I don't have, but we'll undertake to get back to you with the stop locations and detailed timetable. But in general terms, the intention is for the service to enable a full commuter day within the city. Now that's, you might be aware of a current health shuttle service that's being provided, but that's kind of what distinguishes this really. And to that end, it meets the needs of both commuters who are wanting to spend a full day in the city, but also university students or others. The total fare I am just having a quick look at that for you. I'll look that up partly because at the moment we are operating in an environment of discounted public transport fares, which makes it not as straightforward a question for me to answer, but I'll have that answer for you in a second. So the fare from Tikawiti to Hamilton is it's a 5-zone fare. The cost of that fare, if using a B card, a one-way fare, is $4. The cash fare price is $6. Now there is also a weekly cap so if you're traveling every day, the most you will pay for that fare over the course of the week is $36 for an adult, or for a youth, $30 or under. The other thing to add on top of this, however, is that the Ministry of Education not the Ministry of Education, the University of Waikato is also contributing to the fare cost of its students, because this would replace their daily shuttle service. So for those University of Waikato students, their concession on their B card effectively means that they have a free trip in, because that's what they're currently receiving via their dedicated shuttle service.
Gosh, that's outstanding, Mark, really. Yeah, when you consider the cost of travel nowadays, for the opportunity for rangatahi to travel and get educated and get home again, that's really, really good. Any questions from councillors? Councillor Dow.
Mark, would anyone be allowed to use the service, like at the bus, if there was space, or do you have to be education? Like, could I go to my transport regional meetings without getting a parking ticket? Use the bus? Or
Absolutely. So yeah, that's one of the great things that we can leverage here. So the first thing that we did when Ministry of Education approached us was said, have you had a conversation with the University of Waikato? Because they were already offering a daily service. But that was an exclusive service to their students, as would one have been if the Ministry of Education simply sought to set up their own service in parallel. So what we've been able to bring about here is one that also enables the public to benefit from the service. So absolutely, it would be available for any member of the public. On the back of securing the funding shares, one of the things that we'll be working on quite quickly is seeing if we can get some retailers up in the towns through which the service runs. Retailers are those who can offer in-person B cards and top-ups, but the online option is always available.
Outstanding. Thanks, Mark. Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Jeffries.
Thanks, Your Worship. Yeah, just a couple of quick questions, if I may. Assuming that the research has obviously been done, have we got any idea about the numbers that we're talking about coming from the Ōtorohanga area, Mark?
We do have some indications of numbers. So the targets that are within the paper in respect of the Ministry of Education's performance targets are in the order, they're reasonably modest. We're anticipating about 18 or so passengers each way per day on the services, but that's only from the education cohort. So we're expecting potentially to double that. So we would be looking at in the order of 30 passengers a day, which is quite good utilisation for that length of trip for our standard format vehicles. But one thing that we've learnt is the value of these types of trial services. We almost our best estimates are only ever best estimates. And the numbers can vary significantly. So there's significant benefit in the trial in itself to understand people's willingness to travel from what their stated preference is to what they're actually willing to do on a daily basis.
Okay, thank you. Mark, the contribution from council, is part of that going to be used to promote and advertise the service, or how is it intended to actually alert our community that this is available now, or will be. Yep.
Yes, so the regional council would lead the communications and marketing activity. As part of the cost of service, already built into that is a small administration charge. Now, what that administration charge covers is the work that that our team does to work with territorial authorities and others to design and package up a proposal like this, but it also takes it through to marketing and implementation. We tailor that obviously depending on, if it's an area that already has public transport services and the marketing to support those, but obviously in this case it's a new thing. So we would be leading that activity, and that's within the cost of service.
Okay, thank you. And just one more thing, it's more of an observation rather than a question, but there's some reason I actually support the what we're talking about here. I think it's a great idea, but the only reservation I have is will local businesses see this as potentially putting people on buses to go and shop up in Hamilton instead of shopping locally? Is that something that's been thought about?
Yeah, in fact, there's a technical term. It's not that technical actually, but there's a specific term for that problem, and it goes with any transport investment, not just public transport. We call it the two-way road problem, which is that improved connectivity enables people to access things outside of their locality as much as it means that people can access that locality. So it's really difficult to say ahead of a trial service as to whether or not that will be borne out. But my sense is that typically people are not using public transport services to access retail, other than if they are seeing it as a destination experience in itself. So I would expect some people would probably, from time to time, probably younger people think, or perhaps retirees may seek it as an experience to come into Hamilton, spend some time in Hamilton, go to the base, and as incidental to that, they may undertake some retail activity, for example. But that's typically how we see public transport being used. We don't typically see it for the access to essentials, general retail, that type of thing.
Oh, well, thank you for that. No, that's answered the question. So thanks for your input. Thank you.
Mark, one other question for me. This is obviously a fantastic opportunity, incredibly well subsidised. After the trial period, and let's say it is a total success, is this level of subsidy expected to continue?
The total level of subsidy from Waka Kotahi we can expect to continue. I expect that there may also by then be other avenues of funding associated with the climate emission reduction funds. From discussions with the Ministry of Education, however, I expect that their funding will be contingent on two things. One will be the continued performance of the service in line with the targets that they've set themselves. But also, they may well seek to act as a catalyst for services elsewhere in the region. And so I think there is a real question about and some considerable uncertainty about what LTP 2024 would need to look like in respect of continuity of service. I think the timing of this, however, would enable us to have a relatively short bridge between the end of this, the current funded trial and the start of that 2024 LTP. So we would have plenty of time, as well as the evidence from the service patronage, to make some decisions in relation to whether or not a continuation of the service would be justified.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. Any further questions, Councillor Prendergast?
Mark, just a question around the tertiary institutes semesters, and do they align? And how do you choose the dates that you will be running the service for?
Yes, thank you for the question, Councillor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the start of the service is mid-February, which aligns with the start of university semesters. And the service would actually be discontinued over the peak summer period, the Christmas period, which also coincides with the shutdown of the universities, it is extended beyond and through the breaks in semesters because it is a public service as well. However, in the absence of the tertiary and other activities that people might travel for, and generally when we look at our public transport system, it pretty much aligns with when we tend to turn things into a Christmas timetable in any case. So our general urban networks, for example, the services start to look like those that run on a Sunday because patronage is so low. So it has been informed by, and the start in particular has been informed by the start of that semester, but not exclusively because it is intended to operate as a public service as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Tanya, you have a question?
Yes, just through you, Your Worship. So at the end of the public, at the end of the 18-month trial period, Mark, is it envisaged that if the service was going to continue, it would become a regional rate?
Yeah, through you, Your Worship, there is a slightly broader kaupapa that my council will be having region-wide, including with your council. And Your Worship, you will recall that this started last triennium in relation to the regional council's approach to rating for public transport services. Our current funding policy limits our ability to rate for public transport services to Hamilton City. That was extended the last annual plan to Hauraki, Matamata Piako and Thames Coromandel districts. What my council signalled its interest in doing is rating region-wide for public transport services, but there was a really strong response to that proposal from territorial authorities saying, we think that's the right thing to do, but we don't want to lose our voice in the development of these services, and we want to ensure that the spread of that funding is fair, because depending on the rating model that's adopted, we want to make sure that a fair amount of the service cost is linked to those who benefit directly from it rather than it just being a flat spread. So the intention from my council was last triennium, and I'm anticipating it's going to be the same this triennium, is to continue that kaupapa. And that would see my council have 3 options for rating models as the basis for consultation with territorial authorities by the end of June this year. So have that conversation and be in a position to implement, as Tanya said, a new rating model for the 2024 long-term plan, which would mean that it would this service would be able to fold in.
Kia ora, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Just a question regarding the two-way round, and I'm thinking here of our local businesses and the recruitment of staff. I'm just thinking, is there any possibility in your trial that you can look at whether that the transport system could work in reverse, as we could bring people down to Ōtorohanga to work or for connection to Waitama Caves? Is there any part of your trial that you could look into people travelling south?
Through your worship, I think I'd be very happy to do that. What starting a trial like this does is it gives us a cohort of people to inquire with about what would really work for them or what would make it better. Acknowledging that the basic service is fairly basic. It does give an opportunity to expand on that service either during the duration of the trial or following that when new funding decisions have to be made. But I'll take a note of that and ensure that as part of our evaluation of the service, which isn't just on the numbers that use it, it's also on the reasons why they use it, that we'll absolutely be able to inquire about that point, what would make it useful as a two-way service, or the extent to which a two-way service would generate benefit for the local economy and socially as well.
Thanks, Mark. In terms of us keeping updated on how the trial's going, will there be regular updates from Regional Council back to the TAs in terms of the participation numbers and where the direction of the trial will head if there needs to be a redirection, as Councillor Johnson was suggesting.
Yes, Your Worship, there will be. We'll be able to provide at least quarterly updates that will form part of our general, which is part of our standard practice in respect of service patronage. Now, there's two ways that the council may receive that. They might receive that directly. They may also receive it via Rodney, I understand, has just been put forward as your representative on the Regional Transport and or Replacement Regional Connections Committee if that's re-established. So absolutely we'll be able to have eyes on the trial as it proceeds.
Thanks, Mark. Any further questions, councillors?
Kia ora, Mark. Just a question. In terms of the alignment to the education and tertiary study, how are you getting the information out to the local and stuff in terms of timeframes for them to understand when this free transport is available for them?
Yes, through you, Worship. Worship, this is a real challenge that we have had in trying to bring this about quickly. Ideally, we would have had all the ducks in a row, probably ahead of local body elections, but that wasn't possible. And it's only now that we're able to seek formal commitment for funding, which means that communications, as you'll appreciate, can only really follow once we've had that formal confirmation of all the funding. Otherwise, we would have really liked to be out there probably over the last couple of weeks as Kura and others have started to wind down so that they are able to inform people's enrolment decisions. But as soon as we get the final piece, which will be Waitomo's decision on the same matter next week, we'll be in a position to get out there and start promoting the service actively.
Thank you. Any further questions? If not, hey, Mark, thanks for turning up to our council meeting today, and thank you for the report. I really appreciate it. It's thorough. It's going to be really exciting going, looking ahead, and I'm sure it's going to be well, the service is going to be well used, so thank you. So in front of us here, we have the staff recommendation that the Ōtorohanga District Council support an 18-month trial period from 13 Feb 2023 to enable a daily bus service to be established between Tikawiti and Hamilton, with stops in Ōtorohanga and Tokoroa at Hamilton. And B, approves the allocation up to $9,700 for the 22-23 financial year. And C, approves the inclusion of a budget of up to $24,000 in the draft annual plan for 23-24. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Move Councillor Dow, second Councillor Jeffries. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Mark. Right, moving on to item 8, council and committee meeting dates. Graham.
Apologies, Your Worship. Yeah, so this is just to adopt the meeting schedule for council from December 22 to the end of 23. You'll see the recommendation there with the proposed dates and also the proposed dates for risk and assurance, grants and award, and creative communities.
Thanks, Graham. Any questions or concerns over those dates that are put forward? Yes, Councillor Jeffries.
Yes, Your Worship, I'm sorry, the 16th of May, I'm going to have to request a leave of absence for that meeting. So I'll put it in now, if you don't mind, in case I forget.
Okay.
But also the risk and assurance meeting for the 6th of December. I've got a prior commitment that day, and I'm wondering whether the other members of the committee would be happy to change that to the 7th or the 8th, if that's possible.
I'm not sure off the top of my head. Tanya, is there any concern, or with Kaya? Possibilities. Brendan's got one suggestion in the back. Brendan. Okay. Okay, thank you. Tanya?
Your worship, rather than sorting this out here for individuals, maybe Graham and Brendan note that and have a look at what the other options are and come back to the now constituted committee with some options.
Yep.
Thank you. All good.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, councillor. No other questions there, so we've got the staff recommendation that the Ōtorohanga District Council adopt the meeting schedule for Ōtorohanga District Council from December 22, end of 23 as follows, and adopts the following committee meeting schedule for December 2022. And that's it. Move on a second for those, please. Councillor Christian, Councillor Dow, all in favour? Against? And we'll obviously get back if this alternate date can be sorted for those problematic time frames. Thank you. Moving on to item 9, financial report for the month ending 31st October 2022. Brendan.
Thank you very much, worship. Let me just find it in this massive agenda. Here it is. Okay, so for those returning councillors, you may recall that we used to do a combined financial and capital update report, myself and Mark. What we've decided is we're going to split that in two, because with Mark's report, there isn't usually much changes every month to month. It's probably every couple of months that it's worth him reporting on changes. So he'll do a separate capital report and I'll just do a monthly financial report, just to explain why it's not as it was in the previous training. So just going through, I guess, the three statements that we put in here. Our revenue expenses to the end of October. So yeah, we've got a net surplus to the end of October of 3.4 million compared to a budget of 2.2. Most of that's around timing of expenditure and timing of some of the income as well. So obviously all the rates income for the first instalment is recorded, so that's why that's only $384 variance there. The big variances are obviously the subsidies and grants, the other income, which is slightly down on what we budgeted due to timing, as discussed. In terms of the expenditure, so the big savings are the employee benefit expenses and the other expenses. So as I said in the comments, with the employee benefits, we've budgeted for some additional staff with the whole realignment that's going on. We've obviously included that budget for a full year, but some of those roles are still being advertised and vacancies to be filled at the moment. And then the other expenses over the page, the previous page. Yeah, that's a whole heap of little things. It's difficult to break it down into one specific item. Some of it's around maintenance, some of it's around excuse me, activity operations. So it's just the timing of it, particularly maintenance. Maintenance can be all over the show. You put in a budget for a year, you'd spread it evenly over the year, but all the maintenance might have to happen at the end of the year, particularly if it's reactive as opposed to proactive maintenance. So over the page to the statement of financial position. So we're looking pretty good there. Healthy amount of cash in the bank, 4.3 million. And our current liabilities are only about 2.5. Most of that in the 1.3, sorry, trade and other payables, and the 800,000 have been government advance. So it gives us a working capital of $3.8 million. And then the combined cost of service statement at the end of the last page, just as I discussed at the workshop previously, it's a similar version of the revenue and expenses, but it breaks it down in a different way so that you can see what our different groups of activities are costing us. So as you can see, year-to-date actuals for all of our operating expenditures 4.4 across all the various groups of activities. So land transport is obviously one of the big ones, and the governance and leadership is the other big one there. And so that's most of the support costs. So that's the building, that's IT, that's most of the staff costs, with the exception of water services and land transport, who are sitting in those various activities. And yeah, all those sorts of the support costs, as well as all the costs of the council, say salaries or previous council salaries as well. In terms of capital, so we've spent, well, capitals and loans repaid, we've spent about 5.3 on budget of 8.9. Again, a lot of that is timing related. So we do our best with the capital budgets to try and allocate what we think we spend the money, but obviously some activities, roading, for example, is very weather dependent. So you can't always do it as you budgeted that you might be able to do it. And also some contracts obviously take longer to tender or that sort of stuff. So that variance can happen. When Mark does report on June in December, he'll do one. He'll probably give you a bit more detail on that. And that's pretty much it. So any questions?
Thanks, Brendan. For new councillors, it is hard to get your head around where the financials are at this stage because they are all over the place. It's only early in the year, and if, as Brendan said, if you've got waiting on subsidies and then you're waiting on the weather, et cetera, it's just, it's a bit Mickey Mouse. Brendan would say it's not, but it's just very, very hard to follow. In terms of where the expenditure is. So it's only when we get to probably the last couple of months of the financial year that you get a real true indication of how it's all come together. Questions, councillors? Councillor Jeffries.
Just one quick comment, if I may, Your Worship. Brendan, in your statement of comprehensive revenue and expenses,
Yes.
You've got actual budget and variance. Would it be possible to have that formatted along similar lines to your combined cost of service statement, which shows the full year budget as well? I'd find that very useful. No, that's good. A good idea. I can do that. That's the problem. Thank you very much. And you just make a point. His worship's already said this, I think, but this is the result for 4 months. I wouldn't take too much notice of the results at the stage. We're only 4 months into a new year, so half annual will be a good indication.
Thanks, Councillor Jeffries. Tanya.
Through you, Your Worship. While I wouldn't describe our financials as Mickey Mouse, but I know what you mean, it being relatively early in the year. What I would say is that for new councillors and maybe for returning ones, we will take you through a more detailed sort of line by line what these things mean in the next year. So in the next few weeks, staff and I will talk about the next stages of your induction program and what that kind of next level down means. And so you will receive full explanation of these. Also, we'll be putting together our annual plan. And so you will get to hear about lots of these different lines and explanations of what things are. So your role, I guess, as governors is to be assured that the financial situation is sound, sustainable, robust, transparent, all those good words. And our job is to help you be able to reassure yourself of that. So I just want to kind of, I guess, reassure you that we know that some of you may be wondering what these line items are, and we will explain them in a more detailed process next year. Thank you.
Cool, thanks, Tanya. My apologies for my flippant reference to Mickey Mouse. But I think, that training is going to be really important. So when you actually do look at the accounts, you have some real clear understanding of what's going on. So appreciate staff working on that. Anything further to add, Brendan?
No. Just one further question, if I Your Worship, through you, Brendan, are we on target to adopt the annual report for this year? At this point, yes. So I'm supposed to be hearing back a final sort of thing by next Monday from Deloitte. So they're currently going through the actual annual report document, making up any changes. There's a couple of little straggling bits of information they're just chasing up with use of expert letter from Becca. They've got one of those yet. A couple of little things like that which aren't going to hold anything up. So as far as I'm aware, I haven't heard anything to say that we're not going to reach that deadline. It was the 28th, which then obviously gives me time to get the agenda item to get some assurance.
Thank you. Tanya, is your hand up or you just like showing you? Okay, thank you.
Through your worship. So we received a letter from the Office of the Auditor General last week, I think it was, that said that there will be some councils who won't have their annual reports signed off before 31st of March, I think was the date. Sitting with some CEs at rural and provincial meeting last week, I talked to a few of them where that was a reality. So the dates are being pushed out. It's not through our staff's lack of being prepared or on track. It's more the squeeze that is on the auditors and the availability of auditors. So yeah, we're still aiming for that date, and we've had nothing, as Brendan said, that says we won't be ready for that date, but there are plenty of councils that definitely won't be adopting before Christmas.
Yeah, I guess we're lucky in that respect, and that Deloitte is our auditor as opposed to Audit New Zealand, because obviously Audit New Zealand has a lot of that squeeze on it. Deloitte being a commercial, one of the big four accounting firms, as they're called, they are also struggling for staff and resources, but they don't have as much. Obviously, Audit New Zealand has a lot of, because they do all the government, or most of the government, including central government as well as local governments. They have a lot that are all 30th of June trying to get done at the same time. Deloitte's a bit more spread out their workload through the year, so they aren't as pushed for resources. So that's actually probably helped us in that respect.
Oh, thanks, Brendan. Councillor Johnson.
You just with regard to the employee benefit expenses, the savings, aka vacancies, are they spread around the whole council, or is it some areas greater than others?
I think, did Tanya want to talk to that?
Yes, through your worship. Yeah, there's a pretty even spread across the organisation. We're recruiting in Mark's group at the moment. We're started recruiting in Nadia's group for a couple of roles, and we've just completed the review of finance, and so we will start recruiting a couple of roles there, and then we're pretty much complete with the realignment. So yeah.
Thank you. No further questions. So we have a staff recommendation here that the Ōtorohanga District Council receive the report titled Financial Report for the month ending 31st October 2022, document number 660696 from Brendan O'Callaghan, Finance Manager. I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Seconded Councillor Jeffries. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 10, updated code of conduct template. Graham.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. So Local Government New Zealand has recently updated the code of conduct template. You'll see this attached as an appendix to this report. Just a summary of the major changes around that template. Just a more explicit description of unacceptable behaviours, an acknowledgement of the Treaty of Waitangi as the foundation document in New Zealand, and a description of the principles and how they apply. Also acknowledgement of the principles of good governance drawn from the UK Government's Committee on Standards and Public Life, and an amended approach to investigating and assessing alleged breaches designed to ensure the process is independent and focused on serious rather than minor or trivial complaints. So the updated template will be presented at the next meeting in December for adoption. So until that's adopted, the existing code of conduct that was in existence in the previous triennium is still applicable. So this is just for council to receive and a little bit of light reading before the next meeting.
Thanks, Graham. It's one of those things that you tend to read only when there's a problem. But thank you for that. Is there any questions from councillors? Or if not, we have the staff recommendation. Councillor Jeffries, my apologies.
Sorry, just one comment. I did go through the template, and
You're anticipating problems, Councillor?
Yes, it's extremely comprehensive, and I can't see too much wrong with the one we've got. So I'd be interested in actually someone telling us what this template is suggesting that is are going to improve the one that we've got. Otherwise, it just seems to be a bit of an overkill. That's just my personal.
Do you want to speak to that, Graham, or Tanya? Yes, Tanya.
Through you, Your Worship. I think I'm safe to say that the commentary around code of conducts is that they lack teeth. So as His Worship said, it's all kind of going well and fine until you know it isn't, and then you need it. The 2 bullet points, I guess, for me under 4.4. An explicit description of unacceptable behaviours. It seems that some elected members, and I'm pleased to say not here, find it difficult to distinguish what misconduct or conduct and behaviour out of a code of conduct, outside of that, actually looks like. The other one is bullet point 4, and that is the amended approach to investigating and assessing alleged breaches. Now, in the past, code of conduct breaches have been largely laid on the chief executive to deal with. And sometimes it's been the chief executive that has actually made the code of conduct complaint, which has been kind of tricky. So I think the amendments here are to beef up how that process works, to encourage or maybe even insist that an independent is put in place to help a council who maybe is facing any sort of breaches of the code of conduct. So there's the tiriti principles obviously are important, and they're woven through the document, and then the good governance principles as well. But from my perspective, the 1 and 4 seem to be the areas that councils have struggled with in the past, and they've sort of beefed them up a wee bit. So Kaya may have something to add to that. No, she's shaking her head.
Cool, thanks, Tanya. Yes, obviously just those couple of points there, but really it's about adopting next month. So if there's nothing further, we have the staff recommendation that Ōtorohanga District Council receive the report titled Code of Conduct document number 660539 from Kaya King, Manager of Governance. I'll move that. Do we have a seconder? Seconder, Councillor Tamaki. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Moving on, we have nothing in the public excluded part of the agenda. Other business. What we do now, councillors, should we just do a round table and just say what you've been up to, if you feel you need to, on council business over the last month or since following our last meeting. And it may be where it really comes into effect is if you've been on some of these appointments or some of these committees and what you've got out of that. And it could be the report back from Civil Defence or Regional Transport Committee and the like. But yeah, we'll just go around the table. So with you, Councillor Jeffries.
Thanks, Your Worship. I can't remember what I said at the last meeting. I thought I'd written it down. So very briefly, I'll just go through October. 5th of October, we had a Risk and Assurance Committee meeting. 5th of October again was our annual report and the Ōtorohanga Town Concept Plan workshop. 6th of October, Ōtorohanga Housing Plan meeting. The 11th, we had the College Hostel meeting at Makatu Marae at Kāwhia. 25th of October, I attended a meeting of Te Taio o Kāwhia Moana, and there was some outcomes still waiting on that to happen. 27th of October was the new members induction and the swearing in of the ODC and Kāwhia community boards on the 1st and 3rd of November. And on the 7th of November, we had the bus tour out Kāwhia Aotearoa. My apologies for not being able to attend the bus tour on the eastern side. Sounds like it was a good trip. Anyway, that's me. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Basically, it's been pretty full on with the induction over the last month or so. Been involved a little bit in the Ōtorohanga Community Board. I went to the swearing in ceremony for them, Councillor Christensen. We've had a couple of informal type sort of meetings with the OCB, the think tank discussions. I had one last night here, which took forever, but some good ideas came out of it. So, yes, and just getting my head into things at the moment, and yeah, onwards and upwards. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dow.
I've been on the Duxton too, in a bus trip. What else have I done? I'd actually like to mention too, it's really great to see. Well, it's a bit unfortunate for people that want to stop at a bus stop to get a bakery, but now there's buses stopping there. It's been really good for the town. Like, it's filling up the town with people, so it's really cool. One thing I did, you may be interested in is, I went to Mount Messenger to have a look at the new bypass, or the new road they're going to put through to bypass Mount Messenger. And interesting thing, the guy was talking about how one side of the road is pretty much, they've done so much pest eradication, and so there's kiwis and all sorts growing in there. I mean, growing there, living in there, which was actually quite interesting, because about 2 nights before I was driving the truck and I was coming down Mount Messenger, and I said, "There's a bloody kiwi ran across the road in front of me." So yeah, which I've never seen run across the road, which I thought was really awesome. But where they're putting the road apparently is quite full of pests, and so nothing's, you know, so they're going to do massive pest control. And yeah, there's tunnels and bridges. It's quite a major operation. It's going to be quite a few years, but it was really interesting. Yeah, so that's basically that State Highway 3 going to link us to New Plymouth. So yeah. Otherwise, yeah.
Thank you.
Cheers.
What a treat.
Yeah.
Councillor Christensen.
Pretty quiet, just community board catch-ups and induction, but I was quite interested to ask Councillor Jeffries about the hui that you had at the marae for the hostel. Like, were there any outcomes? Like, what's happening?
Sorry. From memory, and I think Councillor Tamaki was there, weren't you too? I think the concern was that there were families out in the Kawhia area who were struggling to meet ends meet without having to find, on top of all of that, fees for the hostel. And so I think the discussion, correct me if I'm wrong, Jamie, was around how we would assist those people and what funding is available. And we did have some representation from both the National and Labor Party people there that night. So I think it's been pretty much left with the college board of trustees to follow up and see what we can do to help. But it was very emotional at times. There was one particular lady who was really struggling, and your heart really had to go out to some of these families who are just, you know, struggling to put food on the table, really, let alone find fees for education, which in a lot of people's view should be free anyway. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens there. Yep. But it was a very useful meeting. Worth having. Yep. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor.
Awesome, thanks.
Gather you finished. Okay, Councillor Williams.
In terms of representing council, sort of informally, that's probably something we need to work on when people are inviting council to go to things, how they want us to add value to their events. But yeah, so just the museum at the Waka and the glass negatives and the display. The pink ribbon evening that was, I believe, from Leanne, was really successful in the funds raised for that. And the college prize giving, awesome set of students up on stage and receiving their awards and moving out into the community.
Thank you. Councillor Willison.
I really don't have anything to add other than to share my gratefulness for being a part of this process and being a part of this Monday. And thanks to you, Councillor Christensen, for bringing up the hostel. As we all know, my wife and I are the custodians of the hostel at the moment. And yeah, we're struggling, absolutely struggling. Numbers are down, numbers are forecast to go down still out the coast. So yeah, it's sort of in a very hard place at the moment in terms of the hospital's future. But to support what Councillor Jeffrey said, it was a very, very fruitful meeting. And I think a lot of the families who were at the forefront of lobbying the government to have the hostel established were present. So, and they were very, very supportive and very, very positive in their action. So, yeah. Thank you, everybody. It's been awesome.
Thank you. Councillor Tamaki.
Morena, like Councillor Willison, and ngā mihi ki a koutou for your fellas, awhi and your taimeki of our community. Ngā mihi. Me, in terms of learning new stuff, maha. Yeah, no, kei te moe. But I think in terms of the kōrero that's been laid out in terms of the hostel, I'm board of trustees member at Ōtorohanga College. And the feedback from that hui was, I would say, have to be some of the best. So working forward for a framework, a working model for our rangatahi and our whānau in the wider community on the coastal end to attend kura is at the forefront of Ōtorohanga College Board of Trustees. So, and I mihi to them because it's not always a easy space to be in when you are the deliverer of this is not working. So, ngā mihi to them. In terms of mahi that I've been doing lately, so lots of moko papa with our next generation of whanaunga within Maniapoto. So receiving them moko kauai has been a huge part. And I think when I read documents and look at the impact of Māori, that is some nice spaces that our people are moving into to uphold some of that tikanga that I think is important for them to leave whaiates into some spaces like where we are today. Enjoyed the trips, enjoyed going home to Ka and showing the team my home and Roy's home. Was a proud moment, and having that whakaaro Māori through Kisiri has been awesome, woven through that kōrero, so that ngā mihi. In terms of on the ground, so at the moment lots of impact in the kapahaka space moving forward for Matatini. So Matatini is a huge cultural extravaganza, and I invite you fellas to go, and even if it's just for one day, it'll show you a world of te ao Māori in a different aspect. So it's quite transformational for everybody. So I urge you to have a thing. So yeah, and I just have been talking with probably the next generation down about issues in our community. And I look forward to lots of kōrero and discussions coming forward for them to put to the table. So it's me.
Councillor Prendergast.
Thank you, Worship. I just like to reflect on what trainings Councillor Tamaki has just said. I have thoroughly enjoyed the induction process, the inclusion, team building. It has been amazing. I particularly enjoyed the tours around the western and then the eastern side of the district because it gives us all such perspective out of our backyard. So thank you to all the organisation that went in behind the scenes. Just with regard to the boarding hostel, I assume that all sorts of things have been explored. Like, for example, there used to be a boarding allowance that I was quite acquainted with because our family put it into some of the criteria. I think it still exists, but from what you're saying, the children that you're talking about, students, would fit into the criteria. Also, Rural Women New Zealand have scholarships available, particularly what I can gather again for those students in the situation that you're talking about. Now, I have been in touch with the GM of Waikeria Prison because it's in my area. I think it was through Andrew, Andrew or Graham. Thank you for the contact. And he is going to give me a tour of the prison. It's going to be 2 or 3 hours worth, so it's going to be quite comprehensive. And when he emailed me back, he said, is it just going to be you, or will be more people? So I guess I'm just telling everyone so that that was something that you particularly wanted to do, or that it had a bearing on your role as a councillor that you may want to join.
What date is that, councillor?
I have got a huge list of dates for him. From him. He's incredibly busy, of course, and for him and for me, it worked really well if we met super early in the morning, so that might put some people off. But if anyone was interested, if they contact me, and we can take it from there.
Cool, thanks. So that corresponds with Kevin, hasn't it? Yeah, okay. Now it'll be good for us. I mean, I'd imagine there'll be a reasonably comprehensive part of it will be the new build, and then and it's really worthwhile. I think most of us been up there. Yeah. So we can have the discussion following the meeting in terms of coming up with dates. It may suit people. Be good. Thank you, Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, just a couple of things. Obviously, I deputised for the mayor and the deputy mayor at the Ōtorohanga golf, the club's golf tournament opening at the club. Had the privilege of speaking after Steve Wilshire, which is always a hard act to follow. But anyway, it was a lot of fun, and I also put an apology for you, and also urged the attendees to use our retail in town and come back with their family another time and pop a look around. So that was a bit of fun. We've had yeah, and thank you for coming to have a look around Beatty Home, Max, and I hope it's a bit more of a regular recurrence because we are still under the pump with we've still got carrying about 10 spare beds, and although it's we're not fully staffed, so that is a saving in terms of costs. We are under the pump. And I think it's really good for the staff at BD Home to feel important, and by the mayor coming to visit is just a fantastic opportunity. So thank you for that. And also, if there are any of you else would like to have a look around, I could arrange that at some stage too. But yeah, just I think that's you know, a good thing. Yeah. And lastly, I had the first informal meeting for the Piston Festival on the 11th of March, and just a small team. I did invite Tori and Kat, but unfortunately they couldn't make it. They had signaled to me that they would be interested in being involved, but hopefully they will pick up a bit later, but certainly not exclusive. I want it to be inclusive. If anybody would like to be involved, it would be awesome. And we're just trying to think through a few ideas to make it a little bit bigger. And it looks like our budget will fit well within what has been approved by the Grants and Awards Committee for the previous Piston Festival, which didn't occur because of COVID. So we're all on track there, and we'll have a bit of signage up perhaps in February, about a month in advance, and hope to use as much publicity as we can online to get more visitors to the town. And one other thing too is we pretty keen on trade stands, and we want to invite anybody in the town with a business who'd like to put up a trade stand there to be welcome to do that for no cost at all. So, but anyway, that's my lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Okay, so again, back to, it's been mentioned by a few councillors here. The induction and the tours, I think, were absolutely fantastic. Really enjoyed getting to see everybody and meet everybody and get an understanding of where we're all coming from. And I think there's still quite a bit more to do in that space as well. But certainly coming together with this meeting now, I just feel way more collaborative and joint than what we probably have been historically. So, yeah, thank you for your participation. It's been really cool. So we're about to close the meeting. After the meeting, we'll go into workshops for a wee bit and we can still do councillor alone time. I don't know, Tanya, you still want to see your alone time at some point? Will we call you back in?
Yes,
Okay.
that'd be good. Oh, I'm staying for the workshops.
Okay, good as. So, that's the main part of the meeting coming to a conclusion. So if I can ask Councillor Willison to close the karakia.
Acknowledge acknowledge you all as well. I've also myself really thoroughly enjoyed the bus tours and being a part of the induction process. Really privileged to spend that time with you all as elected members. Nō reira, kei noi tātou. He unuhanga ānuku, he unuhanga ārangi. He māreretanga, he mā unutanga, ko te pau kātū, he pau waha te pau, he pau wehe te pau. Ko wehe atu te pō ki tuo pai kia hewa mai ko te ao marama. Kia mara mai I runga, kia mara mai I raro, kia mara mai I roto, kia mara mai waho, kia mara mai I tua. Kia tau iho mai te maramatanga ki runga ki tēnei whakamininga tau ana mai ngā huatanga papai o te ao marama ki runga kia tātou, otira kia rātou e mawiwiti ana, e toi mahana I tēnei wā. Tēnā e te ao kia ti aho mai I roto, ti toko te ao marama, whanō whanake tū mai te toki, haumi e, ui e, tai ki e, kia ora tātou.
Kia ora. And I'll declare the meeting closed. Thank you.